Chapter 21. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Dance Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Luo Ying and Su Ran were scheduled to perform a dance song for their stage collaboration. The company had already arranged the choreography and sent it to Luo Ying in advance. Luo Ying opened it to have a look, and realized that the company was really biased. They had actually given her all the difficult and mistake-prone songs. In the original book, not only was Luo Ying humiliated on the red carpet, but she also frequently went out of tune on the stage. She danced out of rhythm, and her hands and feet were uncoordinated, forming a sharp contrast with Su Ran, who was on the same stage. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you this time. This dance was indeed difficult for the original Luo Ying, but it was nothing for Luo Ying, who had practiced dancing since she was a child. It only took her less than half an hour to master the dance and quickly practice the movements and positioning. To her, the only difficulty was that this wretched body was useless. She was already panting after a dance. The next problem was singing. The original Luo Ying had not undergone any systematic vocal training. Even if Luo Ying knew how to vocalize, there was a very real problem in front of her. She did not have enough lung capacity, so it was very difficult for her to sing the high notes. Fortunately, they shared the same body, even if one had been trained since childhood, while the other had been grossly neglected. It had some innate talent in singing. Her body had a knack for vocal fries. She could replace the high notes with a rocky twist. She would eventually train this body to hit actual clean, high notes. Even so, there was no time for that. However, Luo Ying had a lot of experience on stage, so she had a way to deal with this situation, which was to skive. If she had to approach some high notes, she could emulate them with a touch of falsetto. After all, dance music were not that technically demanding. After practicing the song a few times, Luo Ying began to practice it with the dance. Lu Zhao, who had just finished some work, heard some moving music coming from the rehearsing room when he was going upstairs. His mind flickered, and he turned around and walked to the rehearsing room. The door of the rehearsal room was not closed tightly. He looked in through the crack of the door and saw Luo Ying facing the camera, swaying her body. The movement traveled from her shoulders to her proud bosom, and then to her slender waist. It was both powerful and gentle. Her hand brushed across her face, sliding down from her heart. Lu Zhao's eyes couldn't help but follow her hand down. He felt as if her index finger had also slid down his heart, and a wave of numbness washed over him. The image of Luo Ying touching the side of her face like a dragonfly treading the water appeared clearly in his mind. Before Lu Zhao could immerse himself in these emotions, Luo Ying's hand suddenly pulled back along with the beat of the drum and stretched out. Her hair, had been permed in elegant curls, was flung to the side neatly, like a blanket of clouds spreading in the sky, and then naturally fell on her shoulders. She winked seductively at the camera, then smiled cheekily. Lu Zhao's breathing caught in his throat. It was only a short, 8-beat movement, but in a few seconds, his mind was completely drawn in, and his emotions rose and fell with her movements. Luo Ying obviously knew the camera very well. She knew how to show her beauty in front of the camera and how to seduce the audience behind the camera. Such control over the camera and stage was not something that could be mastered overnight. What Luo Ying had just said was not a lie. If she put her mind to it, she could blow the world away. Luo Ying continued dancing. Lu Zhao's hand gripped the doorknob tightly, his mind filled with thoughts, but he couldn't bear to go in and interrupt her. Luo Ying moved with confidence and full mastery over her body. Her whole being seemed to glow. She was so beautiful that it enchanted people. They yearned for her, and they would fantasize her. He wanted her beauty, her talents, all for himself. Realizing that he had actually come up with such a thought, Lu Zhao was shocked. How could he have such a selfish thought? Such an excellent and beautiful Luo Ying should be born to stand on the stage. As the dance ended, Luo Ying breathed a sigh of relief. She wiped the sweat off her face with her hand and unscrewed the bottle of mineral water she had temporarily used as a microphone. She took a few sips slowly and finally felt the heat in her heart that was about to explode ease a little. What? She looked up and saw Lu Zhao from the reflection of the camera. Why are you standing there? She turned around and smiled. If you want to watch, you can come in. Veteran performers were never shy of an audience. They would fear performing in the absence of one. Chapter 22. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Passion Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Lu Zhao was silent for a moment. I just happened to pass by and wanted to remind you to close the door when you practice. Otherwise, it would only cause noise pollution and bring trouble to others. Luo Ying looked hurt when she heard him say that. I thought you came here to see me dance. Lu Zhao pressed his fingers together, and his expression stiffened up for an instant. Of course, if you're inviting me, I can always make the time to come. Luo Ying's face broke into a smile within a second. She bent down and made an inviting gesture. She spoke with a standard broadcasting accent. May I ask the Honorable President Lu Zhao if I may be granted the honor to invite you to come in and watch a dance? Lu Zhao pursed his thin lips and nodded in a reserved manner. Sure. He pushed the door open and walked in. Just as he sat down on the stool, a camera was stuffed into his hand. It just so happens that we only have a triangular frame at home, and I've already used it as a front shot. If you're free now, can you help me take a side shot and let me view the stage from multiple angles as a reference? Lu Zhao was speechless. Didn't you just say that I'm an honored guest? Why did you order the guest to do your work as soon as they were seated? It's just a small favor. You won't deny me this little kindness, right? Luo Ying's eyes widened and looked at him pitifully. Compared to the unreasonable and irrational Luo Ying from before, Lu Zhao could not deny that the current Luo Ying, who wielded her vulnerabilities like a weapon, was far more lethal to him. Lu Zhao could not help but cover her eyes with his hand. Don't look at me like that. Luo Ying pressed the attack. She let him cover her eyes and only slightly tilted her head beneath his fingers. Why? As she spoke, her eyelids were fluttering, like a fan stroking his palm. The sensation was odd. Because, if you look at me like this, no matter what you say, I'll agree. But, why am I falling for this? Lu Zhao grumbled in his heart, but he spoke curtly. There's no reason. I don't like you looking at me like that. Luo Ying rolled her eyes to herself and said, but I want to. Lu Zhao was once again defeated. He raised the camera out of her reach and demanded, do you want me to record you, or not? He was using the camera as leverage to get himself outside her line of fire. Luo Ying had no choice but to compromise. All right. I'll stop looking. When she conceded so easily, Lu Zhao was not pleased. If Luo Ying didn't look at him with such eyes, then who would she look at with such eyes? Lin Su. At this thought, Lu Zhao instantly regretted his actions and felt like slapping himself. Just as he was about to say something, Luo Ying had already stood up and turned on the music to prepare for a new round of practice. She even directed him. Please, stand in that corner and shoot, okay? Lu Zhao tightened his grip on the camera, then obediently walked in the direction she pointed and started recording. Luo Ying practiced a few more sessions without rest. Lu Zhao looked at her worriedly. Aren't you still injured? Why are you putting yourself through such high-intensity training? Yesterday, she had still been struggling to walk, but now, she had been jumping around for the entire session without a single cry of pain. Luo Ying waved dismissively. It's common for a dancer to get injured. If she had been afraid of pain and injury, she would not have been able to persist in so many years of training, and she would not have earned herself the opportunity to stand on the stage to shine and become a top singer and dancer. You love the stage. Lu Zhao said, with a tone of finality. Of course. Luo Ying did not even hesitate. She really loved the stage. The stage was a very magical place. When she stood on it and looked at the audience below the stage, the rush brought by the surge of adrenaline was incomparable to anything else. Anyone who had been on stage and enjoyed the stage would develop a form of attachment to the stage. Lu Zhao was slightly perplexed. Since you love it so much, why didn't you take the stage seriously before? Doviko Luo Ying knew that the difference between her and the original Luo Ying was striking. She had not yet dug into further details of the original's habits, but Luo Ying did not intend to crush her feet to fit into the shoes of the original. Chapter 23. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Stunning translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. She managed to come with a good excuse for herself. In a whimsical tone, she said, people, especially in their youth, spend a great deal of time stumbling about, confused and blind. They will waste time on unnecessary matters and unnecessary people. Fortunately, I have come to my senses and realized that I'm more suited to stand on stage, in front of the camera, doing what I like. Luo Ying continued rehearsing. At some point, Lu Zhao was called away by a phone call. It was a call from his lawyer. Mr. Lu, I've redrawn the divorce agreement you mentioned. Do I need to send it to you for your perusal? Lu Zhao turned around and glanced at the rehearsal room. He was silent for a moment. Let's postpone the divorce for now. At noon the next day, the door of the villa was ceremoniously flung open. A fashionably dressed man came with his team. Hello, Mrs. Lu. I'm the stylist in charge of your red carpet today. You can call me David. Luo Ying came here through a book, so she didn't know much about the fashion world of this world. She didn't know that the man in front of her was the most famous stylist in the fashion world. She had been worried about David's ability, but after seeing the few gowns he had brought, her worries quickly fizzled out. Alright, then I'll leave myself in your hands. Luo Ying sat in front of the dressing table. David looked at Luo Ying from head to toe. Her previous stylist was either a fool, or blind. She had such a good figure and such beautiful features, but they dressed her up like that. Don't worry, Mrs. Lu. Your beauty and my taste will turn you into the most beautiful woman in the world. David gave her his word. It was past 4, and Luo Ying's makeup was mostly done. Today, she had departed from her usual style and chose a red silk high-split dress with thin shoulder straps, which completely displayed her perfectly proportioned head, shoulders, collarbones, her graceful and slender waist, and long and well-proportioned legs. David had his stylist put on bright and retro makeup for her, which completely highlighted her vivid and elegant facial features. The misty eyeshadow and eyeliner made her look particularly charming. Luo Ying stood in front of the full-length mirror and turned around twice, watching intently. Then, she picked up the eyeshadow brush, dipped it in red, and gently swept it over her lower eyelids. She picked up the eyeliner pen and gently prodded a mole into existence under her right eye. David had looked at Luo Ying's makeup and was very satisfied. Luo Ying was already very beautiful without makeup. After his skillful hands made their mark, Luo Ying's beauty was almost magical. In a red dress, she appeared like a peony in full bloom. The moment she emerged, everything around her paled in comparison. This was the most satisfying canvas he had ever worked on in his many years in the industry. David took out his phone and was about to call Lu Zhao to claim credit, but when he looked up, he saw Luo Ying holding a brush. She was about to change her makeup on her own accord. Ah, stop! David shouted, so anxious that his voice cracked. He rushed over just in time for Luo Ying to finish drawing the mole and put away her pen. Why did you change your makeup on your own? David was on the verge of breaking down. Hurry up and let me see what you've done. Let's see if I can fix it. This was arguably the piece de resistance of his career, and he couldn't let Luo Ying ruin it. Upon a closer look, he realized that Luo Ying had not been acting out of ignorance. The 2 red spots under her eyes actually amplified her looks. When she lowered her eyes slightly, she looked a little broken. With that mole, she carried the visage of an imperfect, broken, delicate girl. There was a sense of fragmentation in her dazzling beauty. Luo Ying's face looked more like a story. People would yearn to unravel the pages and learn more about her. She became more than a beautiful face, she became an ethereal myth. What magic did you just perform on your face? David blinked in surprise. Luo Ying looked at him. How is it? Does it look good? David couldn't help but give her a thumbs up. He had learned something new today. The corners of Luo Ying's mouth lifted arrogantly. The phone she had thrown on the sofa was already exploding with calls from her manager. Now that her makeup was done, she had the time to bother herself with these mortal affairs. Chapter 24. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A Shocking Appearance Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. As soon as the call was picked up, the manager's flustered voice came through. Didn't I tell you to come to the company before 3? Where are you? Don't you want to walk the red carpet today? Luo Ying scraped at her manicure and said casually, Oh, I forgot. But I have something to do now. Why don't you go to the hotel first? I'll meet you there. The manager was speechless. So, you're not going to do your red carpet makeup anymore? I'll sort it out, so don't you worry about it. As a veteran in the fashion circle, David was very experienced with the nuances within the circle. From Luo Ying's tone, he knew that complicated matters were playing out behind the scenes. However, he was only here for Lu Zhao's sake, so he wasn't very interested in Luo Ying's matters. He looked at the time and said, It's about an hour's drive to Luo Feng Hotel. If you're an artiste, you'll have to wait at the venue half an hour in advance. If you leave now, you'll be just in time. I've already prepared the costumes and wardrobe changes for your performance tonight, David said. I won't be accompanying you on this trip. My student, Annie, will be with you. Okay, thank you. Luo Ying thanked him. David clapped his hands. Such beautiful makeup. It would be a pity if we don't immortalize this moment in pictures. David clapped his hands, and an assistant handed him a camera. Luo Ying took a final look at her makeup and immediately struck a pose. David cheered and then took a lot of photos. You don't need to edit this picture, just post it. Luo Ying was also very satisfied with the post. She was ready to post it on her social account after walking the red carpet. At the venue, a staff member rushed over. Almost all the artistes have arrived. Is Luo Ying not here yet? Luo Ying was not picking up her phone. The manager was about to have a panic attack, but she didn't dare to lose his temper at the staff on the red carpet. Sorry, I can't reach her. The staff member was a little dissatisfied. You're her manager, and you can't contact your own artiste. If Luo Ying doesn't want to walk the red carpet, you can just say so. There's no need to make a scene at the last minute and say that you can't find her. Xia Lan thought of the company's arrangements. If Luo Ying didn't show up, the effect of their painstaking efforts would be greatly reduced. She quickly apologized and asked him to make an exception. The staff member was impatient. All right. I'll give you another 5 minutes. If she's not here by then, I'll take her name away. Also, isn't Luo Ying going on stage tonight? The executive director is already displeased about her not showing up to the rehearsal. If she doesn't show up tonight, your company will have to face the executive director's fury. As soon as he finished speaking, a crisp voice came from outside the door. Sorry I'm late. As soon as Xia Lan heard Luo Ying's voice, she lost her temper out of habit. Where the hell have you been? But when she looked up, the person who walked in was not Luo Ying, who she was familiar with, but a dazzling beauty. Xia Lan's mouth hung wide open, and she swallowed her words of complaint. She thought to herself, since when did such an outstanding figure appear in the industry? It would be great if I could sign her. With a face like this, she would become famous even if she stood still. The staff member was also stunned and had the same thoughts as Xia Lan. However, he didn't know Luo Ying very well, so her appearance was not particularly jarring to him. While Xia Lan was positively shell-shocked, he only admired her beauty for a moment. You must be Luo Ying. Why are you so late? Luo Ying apologized to him, I'm sorry. There was a traffic accident on the way, so I was delayed for a while. A celebrity, and a delicate beauty at that, was looking at him with watery eyes and saying such soft words to him. The staff's heart immediately softened, and his tone quickly softened. It's good that you just made it in time. Just be more careful next time. Since you're here, hurry and wait for your turn. Okay, thank you. Luo Ying followed him obediently and was about to go in, but Xia Lan grabbed her arm and stopped her. A trace of impatience flashed across Luo Ying's brows. What's wrong? You are Luo Ying. Xia Lan looked at the familiar face and had to accept the fact that this beautiful woman was indeed Luo Ying. Chapter 25. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Live Broadcast Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. What's with your makeup? Xia Lan was furious. How was Su Ran going to outshine Luo Ying, when the latter was dressed like this? Therefore, she could not allow Luo Ying to walk the red carpet tonight, not looking like this. Xia Lan, who had already made up her mind, pressed the attack. The company has already gone through the trouble of selecting a dress and a makeup team for you. You are dismissing all their hard work by coming to the red carpet dressed like this. The moment she opened her mouth, she immediately worked on habitually suppressing her. Just as Luo Ying was about to speak, her sharp eyes spotted a girl who was doing a live stream. She was walking towards them. The girl was wearing the logo of the organizer's platform. She suddenly remembered the contents of the original novel. In order to gain publicity, the organizer of this red carpet event had specially arranged for multiple staff to carry out live streams in front of the red carpet to warm up the event. Luo Ying's eyes flashed. I'm sorry, Xia. I couldn't make it to the company at the last minute, so I gave you trouble. She paused for a moment and asked, is my makeup ugly? It's embarrassing for the company. Should I change it before it starts? How is it not good? The girl in charge of the live stream had just walked over, when she heard the conversation between the two. She quickly said, your makeup is amazing. It's such a pity to change it. Xia Lan was in a foul mood. When a third party interrupted her, she turned her head and was about to throw a tantrum when she spotted the camera. She was stunned for a moment, but she quickly realized that this was one of the many official live streams of the event. She could only suppress her anger with an ugly expression. Luo Ying paid no heed to Xia Lan's reaction. When she heard the girl's praise, she happily clasped her hand. Are you serious? Do I really look good dressed like this? She looked like a child who was trying hard to please others. Luo Ying's action struck a chord within the live streamer's heart, as well as the hearts of the viewers. They had overheard the entire conversation of her appearance being shot down by her manager. Just now, the manager had turned her head and glanced at the camera. That brief glimpse of her expression had been terrifying. Most people who had witnessed this scene automatically imagined a poor little artiste trembling in the hands of the manager, and then automatically placed that image on Luo Ying. A beauty was always eye-catching, but a pitiful beauty was heart-wrenching. The girl held Luo Ying's hands. It's true. We happened to catch you on camera, and the section is already going wild. They all want to see the pretty lady. Really? Luo Ying showed a surprised smile, and a burst of tears flashed in her eyes. She performed tears of joy to the point. The girl was touched and said, "You're Luo Ying, right? During the talent show, I even D for you, just because you're so pretty. Oh my god, she's that Luoying, BDNVL.M, is Luoying that good? Looking. A bunch of question marks floated through the bullet screen. They couldn't believe that the beauty in front of them was actually Luoying. That's right, the staff agreed. You're especially beautiful today, so be more confident. With the live broadcast camera on, Xia Lan didn't dare to pull Luoying away, even while being as disgruntled as she was. She could only watch on as Luoying followed the staff into the waiting area. Luoying's ranking wasn't high, and Su Ran was a newcomer, so the two of them were arranged to be in the front. Luoying came in from the back door and walked forward. When she passed by other artistes, she clearly heard a few gasps. Luoying. Compared to the other's surprise, Su Ran's expression was more complex. There was a hint of disgust, disdain, and a faint anger layered in her disbelief. It was impossible for Su Ran not to know about the company's arrangements. However, the moment she saw Luoying, she knew that she was going to lose on the red carpet today. Su Ran gritted her teeth. She was about to negotiate with the company staff to see if they could be separated, but she did not expect the MC to call out their names the next second. Xia Lan was about to call the company to report this, but the company's call came in first. Su Ran is the star of the show today. Why is Luoying trending? What's with her makeup? Xia Lan was dumbfounded. What? As soon as she turned on her phone, she realized that Luoying had only appeared for a short while in the live broadcast. In just a few minutes, she was already trending. It just confirmed her worst fears. Luoying was a person who could become famous with her face. In a corner that she had not noticed yet, the term Luoying's manager suppressing her artistes slowly climbed up the trending list. Chapter 26. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Seduction Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The previous guest had already entered, and the cameras on the red carpet were now focused on the waiting area. Let's go, it's our turn to make our appearance. Luoying took the initiative to hold Su Ran's hand and flashed a playful smile to the camera. The audience watching the live broadcast in front of the screen couldn't help but be moved. Oh my god, this woman is too ruthless. This bullet screen expressed the thoughts of all the viewers. WeChat had always been the largest video platform in the country. It held many large-scale events every year, so it had always been very popular. Therefore, it was no surprise for many people to be watching the red carpet live stream. In addition to the hot searches, some netizens who had been stunned by Luoying's viral beauty had also been drawn in. They never expected to be blasted in the face by Luoying's smile at the moment of entering the stream. It was like watching 100 flowers bloom in a garden. Even the screen seemed to light up before their very eyes. Even die-hard fans of other stars had to admit that Luoying was truly beautiful in this dress. She was so beautiful that once you saw her, everyone else became fleeting images. Luoying had suddenly reached out to hold her arm. Su Ran's body stiffened. Her skin was cool, but the moment it touched her arm, it felt like a hot, scalding iron. Su Ran subconsciously wanted to shake her arm free, but she was forced to restrain herself. Today, she was wearing a pure white but embellished Eastern-style dress, taking on the theme of a dreamy fairy. She did look like a fairy on the surface, but she paled in comparison to Luoying, who was wearing a fiery red dress. On top of that, the difference in their looks was obvious. One was bright and dazzling, while the other was plain and elegant. The two were not comparable. In the face of absolute beauty, all the grace and finesse amounted to nothing. As soon as the two of them walked on the red carpet, everyone's eyes automatically focused on Luoying, and there was even a continuous clamor in the crowd. The camera flashes were relentless. Even the photojournalists that the company had specially bribed in advance couldn't help but turn their cameras to Luoying discreetly, out of professional concern for beauty after they had hurriedly taken obligatory photos of Su Ran. Her side profile, her visage, the graceful curvature of her back, her smile, her raised eyes, her lowered eyes. Luo Ying's every move, every freeze-frame, every shot was like a delicate poster, and the photographers did not want to miss a single one. The moment the two of them stepped on the red carpet, the total number of viewers broke the highest record for the night. The bullet flew through the screen. When the main director saw this scene, he quickly picked up his walkie-talkie. The host on the red carpet was interviewing Su Ran. He asked her what she thought of being shortlisted for the Best Newcomer award tonight. This was a common question, and the team had already agreed on the answer, so Su Ran acted appropriately. According to the original arrangement, after the host finished asking this question, he would invite them off the stage and into the venue. However, just as he was about to say the closing words, the director's latest instructions came through the headset. He asked him to interview Luo Ying, who had not said a word, so that the two of them could stay on the red carpet for a while longer. The host didn't know much about Luo Ying. However, he had been instructed to buy her more screen time. He racked his mind to think of a topic for the interview. He could only use today's stage as the topic. As far as I know, this is your first time performing on stage after the audition team disbanded. And you're not even standing with your teammates. Are you particularly nervous? When she heard the host ask Luo Ying a question, the smile on Su Ran's face froze for a moment, but she had no choice but to pass the microphone to Luo Ying. Luo Ying took the microphone and nodded politely to express her thanks. Of course, I'm nervous, but it's because of this tension that I take every stage seriously. As soon as she said this, those who knew Luo Ying and had seen her on stage laughed. How could she be serious about the stage with her uncoordinated limbs and her tone-deafness? The host knew this much. He heard that Luo Ying had not even shown up for the rehearsal. How could she ever take the stage seriously? His smile naturally carried a hint of disapproval. Okay, then we'll wait and see your wonderful performance tonight. The two of them got off the stage and out of the camera's range. The smile on Su Ran's face immediately disappeared. She broke free from Luo Ying's hand and walked back to the artist's lounge backstage to prepare for the performance later. Chapter 27. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Scheme Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Luo Ying shrugged slightly and slowly walked backstage. As it was her first time here, she didn't know where the artiste's lounge was. After walking around backstage, Luo Ying had to pull over a staff member with a staff card and ask for directions. The staff member pointed her in a direction. The artistes from your company are all arranged to be in Section D. I'm not sure which room you're in, but you can work your way there. Okay, thank you. Luo Ying glanced at the name on her work pass and smiled. Cutie Inin. The staff member's face turned red. She held her face and watched Luo Ying leave in flash of red. She murmured, "Mom, I've been seduced by a fairy." After walking around the corridor of Section D, Luo Ying finally saw her and Su Ran's names in the corner. Just as she was about to push the door open and enter, she heard Xiao Lan's voice coming from inside. The company's opinion is to not let Luo Ying perform on stage later. Luo Ying's hand paused. She stopped in her tracks and stood in front of the door. I don't think that's a good idea. I think Luo Ying is looking forward to tonight's stage. If she finds out that her act has been cancelled, she will be very disappointed. When she heard the company's decision, Su Ran was happy inside, but she pretended to be worried and spoke up for Luo Ying. Xiao Lan's tone was filled with disdain. With her singing and dancing skills, she'll only embarrass herself on stage. When the broadcast gets out, the audience will blast our company for pushing such a useless person onto the stage. When Luo Ying heard this, she laughed in anger. If the company was truly aware of this, they wouldn't have stuffed the original body, who had no experience on stage, into a talent show and made her appear with other incomparably better groomed girls. After her disastrous debut, they threw her to a bunch of subpar shows, ruining her prospects. Why didn't the company do anything about her poor performances when they relied on her to earn money? Now that she had been wrung dry of her commercial value, they had turned on her and accused her of being incompetent. But, we just had an interview on the red carpet. Everyone knows that Luo Ying is going to perform tonight. If she suddenly doesn't show up, the audience will only suspect that something has happened. That will be even worse. What's wrong with that? At most, she'll just find an excuse to brush it off. Anyway, she doesn't have many fans right now, and not many people are looking forward to her stage performance. The audience will just talk about it for a while, and it'll be over. Xia Lan didn't think this was a problem at all. Besides, the company is doing this for her own good. After sending her reputation crashing down for so long, she finally managed to get it back on the red carpet. If she exposes herself on stage again, it will cause an even bigger wave of backlash. When Su Ran heard this, she perked up attentively. You just said that Luo Ying regained her popularity on the red carpet. Is she on the hot search? Even Xiaolan couldn't help but be impressed. That's right, her face showed up in the live stream, so she's on the hot search. When Su Ran's expression changed, Xiaolan didn't dare to continue. At that moment, Luo Ying wasn't just on the hot search. She had just taken a quick look and found that the scene of Luo Ying walking the red carpet had quickly spread on various platforms. The internet was a terrifying entity. If everything went as expected, Luo Ying would probably flood the platform for the next few days. This was an achievement that most artistes wanted to achieve, but Luo Ying had achieved it with her face alone. It really made people envious and jealous. Su Ran took out her phone and swiped into the hot search. She saw that Luo Ying's name was in the top 5 of the hot search list. Su Ran was in the top 11. Su Ran knew very well that many artistes would be attending tonight. As a newcomer, she must have been promoted by her company to be able to occupy a single hot search. However, at a time when everyone wanted to grab a spot on the hot topic list, Luo Ying had relied on herself to carve a bloody path and become a top search. Su Ran bit her lip. She was very unwilling to accept this, but she also understood that the entertainment industry was not a place that could be reasoned with. As the saying goes, a blip of fame depends on connections, but a major leap to stardom was up to fate. However, Su Ran did not want to believe in fate so much. She raised her head. Let Luo Ying go on stage with me. Su Ran had managed to make a name for herself in the industry. She did not get there by being caught up in pettiness. Since Luo Ying was so popular now, there must be a lot of people paying attention to her, so she had to make use of her power. Su Ran knew very well how terrible Luo Ying's singing and dancing were. She was not afraid at all. So what if she was good looking? Before the camera, on the stage, their skills would speak for themselves. If she could really rely on her looks, then Luo Ying wouldn't have been ridiculed for this long. Chapter 28. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Wardrobe Change Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Su Ran was determined to have Luo Ying go on stage with her. Xiaolan had no choice but to agree, after consulting the company. Seeing that they had finally come to an agreement, Luo Ying sneered and put away her phone. Xiaolan didn't know much about Su Ran's plan, so she didn't know what she was up to. However, Luo Ying, who had read the novel and understood Su Ran's nature, had a good guess about it. Su Ran was about to have a rude awakening. Unfortunately, she was Luo Ying, so she would only end up humiliating herself. She wanted to trample on her to set herself up as the terrifying newcomer. Not so soon. Luo Ying pushed the door open and went in. She sat down in front of the empty dressing table. When Luo Ying strode in without even greeting her, Xiao Lan's expression turned ugly. Frowning, she ordered the staff beside her, "What are you waiting for? She's going on stage soon, so hurry and do her makeup and change her clothes. The makeup artist had been arranged by the company. The one in charge of Su Ran was a well-known makeup artist in the industry, who was bound to make her shine on the stage. The one in charge of Luo Ying was an assistant in his team. When she saw a person approaching her with a cotton pad, Luo Ying evaded them. "No need. I found another friend to do my makeup today. Do you know how much resources the company put into their makeup team? They set up the red carpet, they arranged the stage. Are you trying to go against the company?" Xiao Lan was very unhappy and felt that she was deliberately messing with her. What was going on? Although Luo Ying had always been willful and temperamental, she would still listen to the company's arrangements. Why did she become so rebellious now? Haven't I always been like this? Luo Ying flashed her a fake smile. Benov calm Xiao Lan was stunned. Was she still living in the past? At that time, fresh-faced Luo Ying was a new popular celebrity. Her fans paid for her, and she could even make money for the company. But now, what commercial value did Luo Ying have left? Xiao Lan stopped herself from complaining. No matter how much she looked down on Luo Ying, she was still an artiste under her company. If something happened to her, she would be the one to take responsibility. While suppressing the anger in her heart, Xiao Lan had no choice but to soften her voice and say, "There's still half an hour before the stage, and we have to go to the waiting area in advance. We don't have that much time to wait for your friend. We'd better get your makeup done quickly, change our clothes, and wait for orders backstage. It's just a stage performance, you don't have to go through so much trouble." At that moment, Luo Ying's phone rang. She turned around without sparing Xiao Lan a glance. She got up to open the door and saw Annie with her makeup team. David was one of the best stylists in the country, and his student, Annie, was also quite famous in the industry, so Xiao Lan recognized her at first glance. Xiao Lan looked at Luo Ying in surprise. "The friend you mentioned is Annie." Although Annie was a girl, she had short hair, thick smoky-eye makeup, a lip piercing, and a leather jacket. She looked cool. When Xiao Lan recognized her, Annie nodded at Xiao Lan as a greeting. Then, she looked at Luo Ying and said, "Time is a little tight. Let's get the makeup out of the way first and then get you changed." Luo Ying nodded silently. She sat back in front of the dressing table. The team brought by Annie swarmed up and surrounded Luo Ying. Some did her makeup, and some did her hair. When Su Ran saw this, she pinched her own thigh and took a deep breath. Then, she instructed the makeup artist. "Keep working." She kept consoling herself in her heart. She was a capable person, and she did not need to care about people like Luo Ying, who only had her face going for her. This would only lower her level. The style that David designed for Luo Ying this time produced the image of an ice queen. It changed the previously smoky and mysterious style on the red carpet to one that featured glitter and high contrast to wield the dazzling lights of the stage. A short black vest outlined her ample chest and framed her thin waist. It was matched with a high-waisted short skirt. On her feet was a pair of asymmetrical, half-tube boots that ended just in the middle of her calves, making her legs look slender and well-proportioned. After her makeup was done, Annie clapped her hands in satisfaction. Compared to the bright and sexy red dress on the red carpet just now, Luo Ying seemed to have changed completely. She looked sultry and energetic. Chapter 29. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Warning Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Luo Ying winked in front of the mirror playfully, then pirouetted lightly to make sure that her clothes and hair wouldn't affect her dancing. She finally nodded in satisfaction. Xiao Lan looked at Luo Ying's lively appearance and recalled the time when Luo Ying had just entered the safe zone. Her feelings became complicated. At that time, Luo Ying had been like an ignorant little deer. She plunged into the big vat of the entertainment industry and was pushed to the front of the stage as a tool. Accompanied by applause and criticism, she walked alone. She still remembered that on the night of the talent show, Luo Ying met the cruel, harsh side of reality. When she finally got hold of her phone, she saw a string of curses from the internet. She secretly hid in the toilet and cried for a long time. She sadly asked her manager if she was truly suitable for the entertainment industry. At that time, Luo Ying was at the peak of her popularity and the company had already decided to make her one of their money trees. They were just about to reap the profits and of course, they would not allow her to have any problems and retreat. So, Xiaolan had to comfort her and tell her that this was a process that every artiste had to go through and that it was normal. Luo Ying didn't seem to be convinced, but she still pulled herself together. Then she went to film according to the company's arrangements and had no time to think about these problems. As time passed, the light in Luo Ying's eyes grew dimmer and dimmer, and she became more and more cynical. She began to ignore the negative S on the internet. She became more and more mechanical in her acting work, and her temper went through the roof. As Luo Ying's manager, Xiaolan was anxious, but she knew one thing very well. An idol like Luo Ying was an assembly line product, and her best moments ended during the night of the talent show. Therefore, after they had been used up, they would be eliminated, and then look on as the next generation of assembly line products rise and easily replace them. This was the fate of most of the candidates. Therefore, after Xiaolan learned of the company's policy, she watched Luo Ying's change with cold eyes and began to pick her next training partner in her heart. The staff came to remind them to get into position backstage. Su Ran, who had finished her makeup, went out first without any expression on her face. Luo Ying watched as Xiaolan stood up from the sofa. She knew that Xiaolan would talk to the director in a while and ask him to focus on Su Ran during the live broadcast. When Luo Ying walked past her, she paused and asked in a low voice, "You want to sign Su Ran, right?" Xiaolan was shocked. She didn't know why she would ask this. She avoided Luo Ying's gaze and said, "Su Ran has her own manager. Why would I be in charge of her?" Luo Ying flicked her hair and looked at her with a faint smile. "I heard that Madame Zhao is going to resign. She wishes to take care of her baby. She won't be taking in any new stars." Madame Zhao was Su Ran's current manager, Zhao Suo. She had not yet submitted her official notice, but the higher-ups in the company were more or less aware of it. Hence, Xiaolan's attention had long fallen on Su Ran. As a newcomer, Su Ran was indeed rather capable. Moreover, Su Ran had a close relationship with the company's new CEO, Lin Su. With this relationship, Su Ran would easily be a top star. So if Xiaolan could tag along, she would be able to reap the benefits with little effort. After Xiaolan received the news, she went to organize some activities and received the support of two of the higher-ups. This was also the reason why she was so cooperative with the company. This was why she was willing to drag Luo Ying down to be Su Ran's foil. However, Luo Ying was a veteran in the industry, and a veteran novel reader. Xiaolan looked at her in shock. Luo Ying smiled mysteriously. "Not only do I know that she's going to change her manager, I also know who her new manager is." "Impossible." Xiaolan denied it. The company had yet to decide where Zhao Suo's artists would go. Luo Ying softly uttered a name, Meng Lin. Xiaolan's eyes widened. Meng Lin was the head of their company's artist department and the top manager in the company. She had brought up several major stars. She was the company's biggest contributor, and one of their shareholders. It's been a long time since she's managed an artiste. Xiaolan didn't believe her. Besides, Su Ran's a newbie. Luo Ying's lips curved into a slightly sardonic smile. Su Ran is the person Lin Su admires. She is also the daughter of Meng Lin's good friend. Xiaolan was shocked. If that was the case, Meng Lin might truly step up. With Lin Su and Meng Lin backing her up, Su Ran would never fall into the hands of others. Then why had she put in so much effort helping them? Chapter 30. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Shocking the World Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation, what do you mean by this? Xia Lan's heart was in turmoil. Was Luoying acting so strangely, because she knew that Xia Lan was going to give up on her? I still have a year left in my contract with the company. Luoying just wanted to live a more leisurely life. Since you're still my manager, we're bound together, for good or for bad. During this remaining year, I won't ask you to go out of your way to make things work, but I won't appreciate you causing me any trouble either. With her secret exposed, Xia Lan's face turned red and white. She spun around in circles and decided to call the two executives at the company to ask them what was going on. In the end, the news she received was indeed not as she had hoped. From the other party's tone, although they had not made their decision, they did have a candidate in mind. Xia Lan stood there in a daze for a while before rushing to the stage. She looked at the director who was directing the show on the podium and hesitated for a moment, but in the end, she did not walk over. Luoying was dressed in a youthful and beautiful stage outfit. She walked from the lounge to the backstage, attracting the attention of many people. She met a few groups of artistes who were also going on stage to perform. Those with good attitudes would smile at her. Those with bad attitudes would pretend not to see her and turn their heads away. When Luoying walked past, they would speak ill of her behind her back. Luoying actually wants to dance, didn't she say that she wouldn't dance anymore when she disbanded her team? I thought she had a semblance of self-awareness. She's willing to lose face, what does that have to do with us? She moves like a crab. Even a dolled up crab would still move like one. As soon as this line was uttered, several people laughed out loud, because crab was the meme that the audience had used to describe Luoying's dance. The night of the red carpet had always been a time for various artistes to compete for beauty. In the end, no one expected that before the red carpet event even began, Luoying would be the first to get claimed the spot in the hot search. Many artistes disliked her for it. They believed she was too scheming, so they were all secretly waiting to see her make a fool of herself. Luoying also heard the discussion behind her, but she acted as if she didn't hear it. In this circle, only the weak depended on the wagging of their tongues to get by. She saw the staff approach her with an ear monitor. She said, "Please, get me a mic." The staff was stunned for a moment, then tactfully reminded her. The higher-ups have a rule that you can't lip-sync on the platform. The old school mic she was requesting for lacked a filter. Her voice would come raw and clean, unfiltered and unedited. Lip-syncing was off the table, but most performers would still use filters and autotunes. As an experienced singer and dancer, how could Luoying not understand this? This was precisely why she wanted the microphone. Ying, stop it. Su Ran, who had just put on her own ear monitor, quickly stopped her. The two of them were performing on the same stage. If Luoying had a handheld mic, then what was the point of her wearing an ear monitor? If you're not comfortable, you don't have to follow suit. Luoying turned to the director and said, "Please turn off my autotune, too." Upon hearing this, all the staff at the scene were in an uproar. Luoying was being a little arrogant, wasn't she? She can't have given up, right? I'm afraid she's trying to drag Su Ran down with her. Some of the staff members were secretly discussing behind her back. Your sudden change of mind is adding to their workload. Su Ran pursed her lips, her face full of disapproval. Scared. Luoying gave her a provocative look. Why should I be afraid? Although she was not professionally trained at singing and dancing, she had practiced this dance for a week and was definitely not worse than Luoying. Disable all filters and autotunes, Luoying immediately turned around and said to the director. Su Ran saw that Luoying had directly taken advantage of the situation. She immediately regretted it, but she did not dare to change her words in front of everyone. The director knew that this was going to create sensational news either way, and agreed. The audience who had seen the teaser already knew who was about to go up the stage. I'll mute the audio and focus on her face. I heard that she's a terrible performer. I'm here to see if it's true. Can't wait to see the memes this performance is bound to create. Another crab.dance meme. Ready. The stage director's instructions came through their ear.monitors. 1, 2, 3, go. The lights flickered, and the two of them appeared on camera. Su Ran, who was in a daze, was a beat slower. Luo Ying, on the other hand, masterfully stuck to the beat and let out a high note. Coupled with the dynamic music, it blew up the entire audience. Everyone in front and behind the stage, including the audience watching the live broadcast, froze in shock. Wow! The bullet screen was silent for a moment before it surged wildly. Was this the tone-deaf Luo Ying?